Hi everyone, it's Q&A Friday again. Today I want to focus on one question in particular that I've been asked multiple times, and it's quite a big issue, so I want to make sure I take the time to answer it appropriately. The question was asked, will learning signs delay my child's speech? In simple terms, no, it won't. There's plenty of research out there that states exactly that. However, the issue that you're most likely going to run into is that it is not an accepted form of communication yet. Mommy and me classes, baby signing classes have become more popular, so there's a little bit less resistance than there used to be. But in regards to this group in particular, special needs parents, kids with developmental delays, speech delays, kids with a trach like my son, kids with Down syndrome, autism, all these different exceptionalities are particularly prone to hear those types of criticisms. What it mainly stems from is, unfortunately, the way the system is designed. If you take your typical public school, everything is designed around hearing and speaking individuals, children and adults alike. So if you now have a child who is unable to speak for whatever the reason may be, or only be able to speak at a minimum but not really be able to be understood by everyone around, then that child doesn't quote unquote fit into the system nicely. And I'm not saying any of this to be mean, or it might come out kind of blunt, but it's just based on personal experience having to deal with that with my son. So please take from it what you will, and if you need assistance once you come down that road with the school system, by all means let me know and I'll help you the best that I can and guide you and let you know what I did to get my son in the total communication classroom that he's in now. But that's a whole nother story. The question was, will it delay the child's speech? The research basically suggests that speech is a skill versus signs is a language. So there's a big difference between speech and language. A skill can be learned at any time. It's the same as tying your shoes. When you're teaching your child to tie your shoes, does it really matter if they learn it at 3 or at 5? Not really, as long as they eventually learn it, right? So speech, in a sense, at least in my opinion, is basically the same thing. It's a skill that would be highly beneficial in this society and certainly would make my child fit in more. But in the end, it is a skill that he will learn when he's ready to learn it. So in regards to using the signs, what I've actually experienced and what I've heard from many other parents as well, and what the research suggests too, is if there's a basis for language, speech is actually developed much easier because the understanding of the language is there. So in that sense, it doesn't even matter what language you're talking about, whether you're talking English, German, French, Spanish, ASL, doesn't matter. If the child can understand the language and can communicate, then the speech will eventually follow. As an example, with my son, what I've actually noticed, not only does he have a trach, but he's also autistic, high-functioning autistic, and I've noticed that he will actually attempt vocalizations and words with much more motivation when he knows the sign first. So I'm not sure if it's a confidence level on his part. Either way, I went with it. It's like, all right, if he knows the sign, now he's much more likely to actually say the word with it. Whether it comes out correct or not, it might simply be that he knows he's going to be understood either way because he can sign along with the vocal attempt. So I've noticed that a lot. The research also suggests, which is very interesting to me, that kids who sign tend to start speaking sooner. Now, this may not necessarily apply to the special needs group. I don't know. There isn't any research out there on that particular version. But if the language basis is there, the kids have a much more deeper understanding of conversations. So therefore their speech develops earlier and the vocabulary base builds a lot quicker. So I thought that was interesting. Again, this is just my opinion, summing up research data that's available. You will come across the occasional naysayers. The system is built up for oral communication, and I hate to put it that way, but it is. In my area, at least, I have found one speech therapist who was actually in favor of signing with my son. All the others were more along the lines of, no, don't sign, because then he doesn't have any motivation to speak. I've actually found the opposite to be true. The more signs he knows, the more likely he is to try to say the word. So there you have it. I'm going to take my son's lead in that case. What works for you, you have to judge by your own child. Is your child receptive to speech therapy? Is your child receptive but not making the progress that you were hoping for? Then maybe it's just a matter of filling in that gap between what they want to learn but haven't quite managed to wrap their heads around versus when they actually will speak to the point where everybody around them can understand. It's okay to use sign language just as a gap in between. If they get encouraged to use speech even more, then maybe it's a good thing to use both. Maybe after they start speaking, they will on their own completely drop the sign language portion of it. That's okay too. Either way, the goal is communication. And communication is based on language, not speech. So therefore, my mission is to build a communication base. Hopefully speech will come with that. But in the end, to be honest, it's up to our children, not to us. They make the choice when to try to go for it and how much effort to put into it. So all we can do is model the behavior, give them every possible opportunity to communicate so that we cut down on frustration and parenting issues and all the other things that come with it when the communication basis is not present. So therefore, keep on signing. That's my vote. Talk to you next week.